their family life. And finally, I'd like to share with you about resilience-focused family psychoeducation, which is an intervention framework in working with families in crises. To start with, we'd like to brainstorm on specific terminologies that we often use when we talk about families. First, we reflect on the concept of family, family structure, family homeostasis, family systems, family adaptation, family dynamics, and family resilience. So as I go about with my presentation today, you would encounter these terminologies. And at this point, I'd like you to probably spend a minute or two just gathering your thoughts about these specific concepts and how you make sense of these concepts. By the word family, we actually refer to a very basic unit of the society as it is commonly defined. But as practitioners, we also know that the family is the basic unit of care, which means that in terms of difficulties, often specifically among Filipino culture, we gain the support and assistance from our family members. And at the same time, it being the basic unit of care is also a unit of socialization and learning. It is also where we learn very essential skills that we can use to navigate life and to help us cope with the difficulties or challenges that we may encounter as we go about with our day-to-day experiences. But as we speak of the family as a unit, we know that it is not just any unit, but it is an organized unit as well, wherein each member would have a particular role to play in the entire functioning of the unit. There are also certain rules that govern the interrelationship between and among members, and that as an organized unit, there would be strengths and resources that the family uses so that it is able to maintain its integrity. And that integrity is what it actually capitalizes on as the family unit and its members face the normative challenges on a day-to-day basis. Aside from being an organized unit, the family is also a dynamic system wherein these interrelated parts that are functioning in conjunction with other parts or members are evolving and developing as it traverses across life's experiences. And that as it develops and evolves, there would be factors inside and outside the family which would interact with family members as the family members interact with one another. And these interactions shape not just the integrity, but the characteristics of the family as an organization and as a system. Now, why is it important to look at the family as a system which is evolving? Mainly because the narratives of the family members and the narrative of the family as a unit can actually help us somehow envision what is going through with the unit and what are the points or what are the entry points or interventions that we can probably offer. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we see that the families are evolving and developing across the COVID-19 pandemic timeline. So if this framework is based on the sharing of individuals and family members that I gained since the start of the pandemic. So usually when we ask them how they are before COVID-19 pandemic and as the COVID-19 pandemic progresses, we can see a certain pattern. We see that families before COVID-19 pandemic spend more time outside the home. There is usually a different life inside and outside the family. And this is because of the disparity between work life and home life experiences. And there are pre-existing rules that help them navigate their family life, which is helped by the certain level of freedom in mobility since there was still no quarantine at that time. And this freedom and mobility actually becomes also a coping mechanism for them to face normative challenges. So for some family members, those of them who have coping mechanisms such as going to the mall, taking a jog just to take some fresh air, uh, usually they spend this outside the home, and it was something that they can do freely. No. But during the earlier stage of COVID-19 pandemic, we see that those families which spend more time outside the home were suddenly compelled to stay at home. uh, on one hand, it became an opportunity for them to check on one another and discover things about one another, but also the collision of intrafamiliar. So these are the worlds that are inside within the family system, and extrafamiliar worlds such as work, the world of work and the world of school collided. There was a change in routine since they are spending more time together, and at the same time they were made to confront COVID-19 related stressors such as the need to survive and the need to protect themselves from the uh, illnesses that can be acquired. So as the COVID-19 extends, we realize that those opportunities to check with one another sometimes led to a loss of privacy, since especially in the families where the home environment is not as spacious and they would have to share rooms and resources. There was also friction due to proximity, then running out of things to talk about since they spend the day 24/7 being with one another. It is also the time that they discover things that are both desirable and undesirable from for them. And in certain cases, there is a emergence of pre-existing conflicts and the amplified need of belonging and productivity that they usually can achieve prior the pandemic. So this is the transition in the family life across the pandemic timeline. Now, just to show you also in a different crisis situation, this is a study that I conducted sometime in 2017 to 2019 on the case of families who have experienced typhoon and are also facing different kinds of adversities that are socioeconomic in nature. Usually, they they gain something also as an opportunity from their crisis situations. What are the things that they are able to gain? First is that somehow, while the situation is difficult for them, they are able to make sense of the adversity, such as realizing that this is temporary, that this is a challenge, and that it equalizes the different kinds of people across socioeconomic status. And many of them are able to cope with these adversities by using their humor, growing strength from the disaster itself, making the disaster as a motivation for them to survive and strengthen their inner reserves, and also holding on to their faith. They also harness social support from family members in the nuclear family and in the extended family, and sometimes even going beyond family support, such as the support afforded to them by non-government organizations, the community, and the government in general. And in the end, usually after an experience of calamities, crises, or disasters, they learn from the adversity. They're able to evaluate themselves in terms of their strengths and weaknesses more realistically. They gain a renewed sense of spirituality, and they learn to be more prepared in facing potential crisis in the future. So, indeed, across the crisis timeline or the disaster timeline, the family as a unit is evolving, and as they probably lose something because of the crisis situation, there are also possibilities that they gain something from the situation as well. And this is an interesting thing because This is what really family homeostasis is about. Their ability, their capacity to keep the family intact and to maintain the integrity of the family even across disaster situation, as you can see from this framework. So on a daily basis, on a typical situation, families would maintain its integrity as a functional system due to homeostasis, which will be then compromised by any crisis situation, which uh, challenges the family's functionality, while some family would eventually tend to stabilize on that dysfunctionality uh, for some time. But there are also families that are able to recover, to resile, to bounce back from that consequences of the disaster, and even be better after the crisis situation. And this brings us hope as helping professionals when we work with families in crisis. So how do we now work with families in crisis situations? There are actually several things that we can do, and there are many organizations working with families, many professionals, and I'd like to scope and focus only on the things that are within my experience. Of course, uh, the first thing that we do is we conceptualize the case, we assess needs and resources of the families. And when working with families, it is quite unique because we do not only look at the individual members' resources and needs, but we also look into the interaction between and among these members and the unique needs and resources of the family as a unit per se. So a few things that we can look into when we conceptualize cases of families in crisis is first, of course, as Murray Bowen suggested, to look at the family as an emotional system, wherein the change in one part of the system is followed by compensatory change in other parts of of the system. So, if say for example, in a crisis situation, a family member would probably have a unique response as compared to other members, then we try to explore what is the impact of that individual member's response to how the other members in the family responds. Of course, based on family stress theory model, we can also conceptualize by looking at the stressor event. So what is the stressor that leads to the family's crisis? And how is the family meeting the resource needs in terms of this crisis situation? How does the family make sense of the event? And that sense of meaning making is very important for us to understand um, the family's appreciation and evaluation of their situation. Then we can also look into the resistance capabilities of the families, which pertain to the resources and coping mechanisms that they use, as well as the demands. So, what are the stressors? What are those factors that creates a certain sense of imbalance in the family system? And how do these stressors uh, uh, make the family members experience some level of distress or strain? Then we can look also in terms of cohesion, how the crisis situation creates alliances or fosters conflict within the family system. In terms of flexibility, how do the family members and the family unit as a whole try to adjust and adapt to the situation? And what is the impact of the crisis situation and the communication process within the family? We also can look at relationships within family systems, within family dyads, such as couple, siblings, parent and child relationships. How does the crisis situation influence the individual personal growth of each member? And how does the family try to navigate the crisis situation so that they can keep the family intact or that they can maintain the needs of the system? So there are just a lot of frameworks that we can use in conceptualizing, and eventually these frameworks would influence our intervention. But I'd like us to focus at this point on a very particular framework that is very close to me, mainly because for me it is a comprehensive framework, and it also helped me develop a particular framework intervention framework that I was able to use in working with families. And this is referred to as the family resilience framework, which is conceptualized by Froma Walsh, a psychologist. So, in simpler terms, the family resilience framework just says that there are core processes in the family system that help it uh, establish itself and recover from crisis situations. These are family belief system, communication processes, and family organizational patterns. So when we talk about family belief system, this is uh, how the family makes sense of the adversity that they experience. It is also their ability to create a certain positive outlook within the family, even amidst experiencing adversity, and of course, transcendence and spirituality. Their ability to keep faith in the situation and in themselves, in their ability to cope with the situation. When you talk about communication process, it says that families who have clear and consistent message, uh, transmission process within the system, who have open emotional expression, and who are able to collaborate in solving problems, tend to be more resilient as compared to others who have a lack in this particular processes. And of course, family organizational patterns talks about how the family is flexible, connected, and are able to tap on social and economic resources, which enable them to cope with a crisis situation. So with this framework, I try to develop a certain program, which I refer to as this resilience-focused family psychoeducation. It is a manualized intervention. So it's an eight session intervention done on weekends. And it was pilot implemented in Albay and was applied in several contexts, such as the resettlement communities in Palo, who are still, which are affected by the Yolanda uh, typhoon, armed conflict in the now in the drug war, particularly those families of the victims of extrajudicial killings. And what really this intervention does is to work on the specific elements of family resilience so that it can somehow foster family resilience among the family members and the family unit at large. But since it is quite challenging to work on whole families, the pilot implementation of the program only invites family dyads. So usually at least one parent and one child member of the family. So it follows fundamental principles and practice of family systems, family resilience, and as an intervention, it is mainly family psychoeducational, which means that there is an intention to impart knowledge to the family members that we hope they can use to cope with the crisis situation. And aside from imparting knowledge, it also aimed to impart skills and provide a platform for these families to practice these very essential skills. Resilience focused family psychoeducation goes through a certain process, which starts with number one, communing. So generally, this is the rapport building session wherein the facilitator and the family members just talks about very trivial things, connecting with where the family is coming from. There's also the stage wherein we somehow informally assess what the where the family is, and also the time wherein we seek consent from the family, and also make the family understand what the process is all about. Then we go through centering activities. This is now the process wherein the families are led to the goal of the session and the program in general. The co-creating stage engages the family members to create something that will enable them to reflect on a particular element of their family life. The clarifying part is when we impart knowledge to the family through psychoeducation as we know it, like informing them about certain concepts, asking them to reflect about certain ideas that would help them gain greater understanding and deeper knowledge about their families. The cultivating stage is where we apply the knowledge that we gain from the clarifying session or portion. And in the end, we, as the facilitator and the family works together, we establish a behavioral contract wherein the families are asked to apply the knowledge that they gain from the session in their own life, and that they document it through a family task or a family assignment. Okay. So it is an 8 session intervention. So here are the things that we talk about in the resilience focused family psychoeducation. The first session usually is the intake session, as I mentioned. This is joining the family in the words of the structural theorists in family systems. We talk about adversity and resilience and the disaster narrative and how the family makes sense of this experience. Then we talk about family and the appreciation of family participants on the family system, the structure, rules, and rules. Then we cultivate positive family climate by focusing on emotional management and creating positive family interactions. This is already a skill building session. We also have a building session on communication, on conflict and conflict management, on collaborative problem solving. And at the end, we talk about our accomplishments and aspirations for the family during the termination session, uh, which is usually on the uh, eighth session. Uh, in the pilot implementation, we have tried doing it in 8 days, 8 weekends, but we also tried doing it in 3 days. So the 8 sessions were spread in 3 days, and the families are encouraged to participate uh, on all those sessions. So here are a few of the output that we had. So this is a creative way of doing and a simpler way of doing somehow a family mapping activity, wherein we plot the common area in the house where a particular family member spends. Then the yarn would show the nature of interaction, green being a positive interaction and red being a challenging or conflicted interaction. So somehow a simplified form of genogram of the nuclear family in the household. Another one, then we do collage when we talk about how the family makes sense of their experience. Then we do problem tree, looking at the problem in the family and trying to reflect about solutions as a family unit through collaborative problem solving, and also mapping risks and resilience factors through visual arts. And we also do role plays, especially in building the skills. So we conducted an initial evaluation of this framework, and we realized that uh, using just a pre and post test design, we have seen how the scores on family resilience and cohesion among participants were enhanced. And there was also a positive qualitative evaluation among the participants, where they said that the sessions enable them to establish a safe space where they can just vent out their emotions together with other participants and gain a renewed sense of their family life by talking about the meanings that they share with their family members, the parent and the child in particular, and with other families who are part of the sessions. And we realized that it was tested for applicability in different context forms. It would be interesting still to explore how it would fare in other situations. We have not yet tested it in the context of COVID-19, and it would be interesting to explore it in this situation. So basically, those are the things I'd like to share with you today. And what are the key learning messages that we that I hope you gain. First is that the family is organic and dynamic, is organized and dynamic, that there are factors inside and outside the family which influences adaptation and resiliency process, and that there are various frameworks available that we can use as helping professionals to make sense, help families make sense of their experiences in difficult situations. And with this, I hope that we will continuously do our job, our tasks, our uh, moral responsibility to create ecologies that would foster continual resilience within ourselves, within the homes, and within the larger community through the influence and power and talents given to us uh, to actually help the families that we cater and foster. So, with that, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Philippine Academy of Family Physicians and to Dr. Terry Marie Laude, who is a friend and colleague who invited me in this conference. Thank you very much. And if you have anything in mind, feel free to send me an email